Hello everyone and welcome. Make a cup of your favorite drink and get comfortable because this is a wonderful time for news stories from Yellowcat. Send your own stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. What are your homeowners association HOA horror stories? I hope I'm not too late to the party, and if you are the subject of the story, I hope you're offended because this story and your actions deserve some public ridicule. A few years back, I lived in some condos as a renter that had an HOA. Each condo had a street-facing door and garage, as well as a door on the inside facing the pool. I am a typical working middle-class guy with a typical family, a wife, some kids, and the occasional pet. One of our neighbors was 3 specific minority families that got together and decided to buy this one unit on the end. They all lived there most of the time and often had questionable visitors come by. The president of the HOA for the condos was also the majority owner, and he lived hours away but would come vacation at his condo during the summer to be by the beach. One night, my wife and I had just put the kids to bed and we hear this obnoxiously loud knock on the front door. "We have a doorbell," is all I could think. So I walked up to the door and looked through the peephole and recognized the guy, but could tell something was up. My wife freaked and called the cops right away. I opened the door and the guy started screaming, "You dealing? I want some. I will pay right now. Hook me up." He was accusing me of dealing drugs from my house. I explained to him that the family next to us regularly had questionable late-night visitors and he should go over there if he was going to make a scene. But no. He insisted he had seen people that could only be drug dealers come in and out of my unit for the past week. My wife heard the conversation and related to the cops, who at this point were en route. Frustrated at being yelled at by a drunken idiot this late at night, I told him if he thought he found a drug ring, he should call the cops and not go knocking on doors putting himself in danger. He took it as a threat and in return started threatening me. I had enough, so I went inside. About the second I got the deadbolt locked, he starts banging again, waking up my sleeping 3 and 1-year-olds. I step into my room, grab my pump shotgun, told the kids to go to the back of the house, and opened the door again with my gun to his face. My wife told me John, a family friend who was also the on-duty night cop, was coming to the house. I told her to advise him of the situation. The drunken HOA president then took my show of arms as confirmation that I was indeed the drug lord he was after and starts to walk off. I let him because I'm not about to walk outside of my house with a loaded gun drawn. He calls the cops, and before he gets off the phone, John, our family friend, arrives with lights on and everything. I put my gun down and stepped outside to talk the situation through. The HOA president thought that the cops were there in response to his call because he did not know about my wife calling. He starts yelling at the cop, "This is the drug lord, I caught him red-handed, etc." John cleverly asked him to cross the street for questioning, then placed handcuffs on him for being in public domain while intoxicated. He blew a 1.2.12 BAL and got arrested that night. The cops told me that if he was ever a problem again, just to call. The next week, we got a letter from his wife, the HOA VP, informing us that we had to move out. I took that to the owner of the unit we were leasing and we threatened to take it to court. I attended the next HOA meeting with the owner with police report in hand, and the board unanimously voted to remove the president and VP completely from the HOA, and they comped our fees for the next 2 years. My longtime neighbor were the first to move into the neighborhood where we live some 30 to 40 years ago. Their home was the first finished and sold. They had 8 kids at the time. The husband was putting up an old school cable antenna on the chimney. While on his roof, the developer came up and said, "Hey, you can't put that up there. It's against the homeowner's rules." He looked down at him confused and said, "Are there any other members of the homeowners association?" "Well, no." "Then I hereby disband the association. The vote passes unanimously. Now get off my lawn." Saved us all a lot of trouble. When I was younger, my dad started a limousine service. Before the company got big enough for its own office space and multiple limos, he'd bring his one limo to our home, detached condos with an HOA, to clean and stock and sometimes leave it overnight when it was needed for a job. It lived in a storage lot the rest of the time. The presence of a limousine in the neighborhood was apparently distracting to the people on the board, so they passed a rule that you couldn't have a vehicle longer than X feet parked in front of your house overnight. Then the main old guy on the HOA board got a huge RV that he would leave in front of his house for days at a time, so they got rid of the vehicle size rule and replaced it with a rule forbidding vehicles that advertised a business. The limo had a decal on the driver's side door with the name of my dad's limo company and the phone number. Then someone else on the board started a landscaping company and had a pickup truck with the name of the landscaping company on the side, so they changed the rule to only allow such vehicles to be in your driveway, not parked on the street, since the pickup could fit in the owner's driveway, but a limo couldn't fit in ours. Basically, rather than just making a no limos rule, they kept making rules that disallowed limos, but then kept changing it when it would accidentally apply to anything but a limo. My current HOA threatened to kick me out unless I got rid of my 3 cats. Since I don't own a single cat, I sent them an official 2-page notarized letter denying their request, as the number of cats I own must be expressed as a non-negative number. We had this one strange guy in our neighborhood who liked to build strange things in his house. Well, I guess one day he decided to take his hobby outside and build a treehouse in his backyard. Our HOA president was a city councilman at the time, and he was not happy in the slightest. This literally turned into a 2-year dispute where the HOA would keep asking him to add safety measures to the structure in hopes that he would eventually give up and dismantle the treehouse. Eventually, the HOA told him that he would have to have the plan signed and stamped by a qualified engineer saying that the structure was safe. At the next meeting, he handed in the blueprint signed and stamped by no other than himself. That was a great meeting. It turns out that he had a PhD in civil engineering, and there was only one guy in the room that didn't find it funny. My daughter has severe asthma. We bought our condo because it was affordable, clean, and move-in ready. We were trying to move before our son was born for fear a moldy house made our daughter sick and would do the same to our son. Our first summer in the condo, the president's wife went psycho and cut down the tire swing that majority of the owners agreed to let us have for my daughter because she thought it was ugly. Or maybe because we told her teenage son to get off the toddler-sized tire swing. After threatening legal action, the association agreed to let us have the swing so long as it's removable. We hang a birdhouse there when the tire is down and only put it up when the little kids are out to play. The whole ordeal took over a month to settle. I dread this summer when we petition for a swing set. Got a trampoline for the kids. They loved it. HOA asked me to get the insurance coverage for it, so I got insurance coverage for it and made a copy of the statement for them as proof. HOA then faxed every incident report involving trampolines in the neighborhood to my insurance company, referencing my policy number, and sent a letter of disapproval. Now my kids don't have a trampoline, and neither do any kids in this entire neighborhood now. The saddest part is, on Google Earth, it still shows the trampoline, and my youngest daughter was sad when she looked up our address. In the non-slummy parts of South Florida, the HOAs control everything. I can't even put up a fence either because I'm on a corner. The only benefit to having an HOA in my neighborhood is the free Comcast cable and the fact that they petitioned Comcast to get us 50 Mbit internet. I'm moving soon to be closer to family. I can get a 10-acre plot up north with a house twice this size for the same price. I can't believe I ever thought this was a good idea. When I was working as a lifeguard, we almost called the cops on this guy because he was spying on the pool with binoculars from a ways away. Some creepy perv, we thought. We didn't because it turned out to be an HOA board member spying on the lifeguard/pool management to see if they were breaking any rules. They would also drive by really slowly and stare. I lived in a middle-class development of about 900 houses in Northern California. Our neighborhood/part of the development was unusual because people spent a lot of time outside, kids playing, people gardening, chatting, etc., which is why we moved in there. I got a basketball hoop for my 12-year-old daughter. She and lots of neighborhood kids would use it. They all knew to call car and get out of the way immediately if a car was coming. Neighborhood straight into the cul-de-sac. No through traffic. Sometimes us grown-ups would play too. A great situation. Apparently, some retiree had a habit of walking around the development and called the HOA on us because basketball hoops weren't allowed. I knew of several other ones, but I didn't want to mention them because I didn't want to give them trouble too. And the HOA said I could only have a hoop if it was put away in the side yard when not in use. The 200-pound hoop was a bit beyond my daughter's ability to take out and put back. Instead, I surveyed the 65 houses in our neighborhood, putting a slip of paper in everyone's mailbox. Yes, I should be able to keep the hoop, or no, I shouldn't. I kept their responses anonymous because I didn't want anyone to feel pressured. I got 22 yes responses. I went to the HOA meeting armed with my data. One of the board members said, "So 2/3 of your neighborhood is against it." I explained, my anger rising, that no, I'd only received responses from 1/3 and no one could know what the other 2/3 thought. Then they said I would need to change the CC and Rs, basically the association bylaws, which could only be done by a 2/3 active vote of the entire association. Active, meaning I would need to get 600 yeses, not just 2/3 of the people who voted. I told them you couldn't get 600 people to bother voting yes for oxygen, and I put away my basketball hoop, and as it happened, my daughter stopped playing sports. We moved in when I was young, 3rd grade. The HOA was run like S. Many things were falling apart, namely the boardwalk and dock behind one half the townhouses, which could have resulted in a lawsuit if someone hurt themselves. Parents were receiving tickets for everything that would happen. Board members would commit acts against the rules but were untouchable. So my parents led a coup. They hired a lawyer that would sit in on meetings, made a few neighborhood friends, and my mom's best friend moved into the neighborhood. Coup was successful, so the HOA straightened up and fixed most everything. Once we moved out, it went back to S. Guys, thank you for all of the support and likes. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet. See you next time.